Pride does not always announce itself with shouting. Sometimes it wears a clean uniform, carries a polished trophy, and assumes that silence belongs to the weak. On a wet Thursday morning in Tacoma, Washington, an undefeated black belt named Travis Cole slapped the new security guard in front of 37 witnesses. What Travis did not know was that the quiet man wearing the $12 name badge had spent 14 years as a Navy SEAL, and that he had already decided to give Travis every possible chance to walk away. The new guard's name was Daniel Mercer. He was 41 years old, 6 feet tall, and lean in the way men became lean when strength had once been a professional requirement rather than a hobby. His brown hair had begun turning gray above the ears. A narrow scar crossed the underside of his chin, visible only when he looked upward. He wore a Navy security jacket, one size too large, black work pants, and boots he had purchased 3 days earlier for $89 at a discount store near South Tacoma Way. Nothing about him looked impressive. That was deliberate. Daniel had returned to Washington 11 months earlier, after nearly 2 decades of moving between coastal bases, training facilities, temporary apartments, and places whose names he had learned not to mention. 14 of those years had been spent in naval special warfare. He had deployed 6 times, lost 3 close friends, and learned that the most dangerous person in any room was rarely the one demanding attention. His final military assignment had ended without ceremony. There had been handshakes in a windowless office, a cardboard box containing 2 framed photographs, and a retirement certificate that Daniel left unopened in the trunk of his truck for 6 weeks. Civilian life had not frightened him. It had confused him. In the military, every hour had a purpose. In civilian life, people asked what he wanted to do next, as though desire were a map. Daniel did not have an answer. He knew how to move through darkness without sound. He knew how to recognize the metallic click of a rifle selector from 20 feet away. He knew how to control his breathing while cold water climbed over his shoulders. He did not know how to explain an 11-month gap on a normal job application. The security position at Harbor Point Athletic Center paid $23 an hour. It included dental insurance after 90 days and required no college degree. The building sat near the edge of Commencement Bay, a square concrete complex with 3 basketball courts, a weight room, a swimming pool, and a private martial arts studio leased by an instructor named Travis Cole. Daniel had not taken the job because he needed excitement. He took it because his 12-year-old daughter Emma lived 16 minutes away with his former wife Rebecca. For most of Emma's childhood, Daniel had been a voice arriving through delayed video calls. He knew the names of her teachers and the titles of her favorite books, but he had missed birthdays, school concerts, and the afternoon she broke her wrist falling from a climbing wall. Rebecca never used those absences against him. She did not need to. Daniel carried them himself. Now he wanted a schedule that ended at the same address every evening. His first shift began at 5:30 in the morning. The athletic center smelled of chlorine, rubber mats, floor wax, and burnt coffee. Rain tapped against the glass entrance doors. Fluorescent lights hummed above the front desk. Somewhere behind the locker rooms, an old ventilation fan rattled every 11 seconds. Daniel noticed the timing without intending to. The overnight guard, a 63-year-old named Harold Finch, showed him the camera system. There were 32 feeds, although cameras 7 and 19 had been frozen since Tuesday. "Management knows," Harold said, pouring coffee from a steel thermos. "Management always knows. Fixing things is different." Daniel nodded. Harold explained the patrol route, the emergency exits, and the rule about members entering through the loading bay. "Nobody comes through there without a staff badge," he said. "Not trainers, not vendors, not even the mayor." "Understood." Harold looked at him over the rim of his cup. "You military?" Daniel glanced at the camera monitors. "Used to be." "What branch?" "Navy." Harold waited, perhaps expecting more. Daniel offered nothing. At 5:56, the first swimmers arrived. At 6:10, a group of retired teachers entered for water aerobics. At 6:23, a delivery driver brought 6 boxes of protein drinks and attempted to leave them outside the fire exit. Daniel redirected him to the storage office. He spoke politely. He did not hurry. He did not lean against the desk. By 7 o'clock, he had memorized the blind spots in the camera layout, the location of every fire extinguisher, and which members held doors open for strangers. At 7:14, a silver sports car stopped beside the loading bay. A man stepped out wearing a fitted black tracksuit with red stripes down the sleeves. He was 34, broad across the shoulders, and carried himself with the stiff precision of someone who expected eyes to follow him. A black duffel bag hung from one hand. The other held a paper cup from an expensive coffee shop. This was Travis Cole. Daniel did not know his name yet, but he recognized the type. Travis walked toward the loading entrance without slowing. He swiped a keycard. The reader flashed red. He swiped again. Red. Daniel approached from inside and opened the door 3 inches, keeping 1 foot behind it. "Morning," he said. "This entrance is restricted to employees and deliveries." Travis stared at him through the gap. "I teach here. Do you have a staff badge?" "I have a key card." "It's not clearing." Travis lifted his chin. "Then the reader is broken. Front entrance is open." For 3 seconds, the only sound was rain hitting the metal awning. Then Travis smiled without warmth. "You're new." "Yes, that explains it. Open the door." Daniel studied the card in Travis's hand. It was blue, identifying him as a tenant rather than an employee. "I can't admit tenants through the loading area." Travis exhaled through his nose. "My studio pays this place $7,000 a month." Daniel did not react. "The front entrance is about 40 yards around the corner. You expect me to walk around in the rain? There's an awning most of the way." Travis looked down at Daniel's name badge. "Mercer. That's right. You're making a poor first impression, Mercer." Daniel's voice remained level. "I'll note that." The loading door closed. Through the small wired glass window, Daniel watched Travis stand motionless for a moment. Then the instructor turned and walked toward the front of the building, rain darkening the shoulders of his tracksuit. It could have ended there. For Daniel, it had ended there. For Travis, it had only begun. Travis Cole had built his reputation over 12 years. Framed photographs covered the walls of his martial arts studio. In several, he stood on podiums holding medals. In others, he wore a black belt embroidered with 4 gold bars. His advertisements described him as undefeated in 41 sanctioned full-contact matches, though most of those competitions had taken place before his 30th birthday. He taught discipline to children on weekday afternoons and combat fitness to executives 3 evenings a week. His adult students called him Sensei Cole. His social media page had 82,000 followers. A local streaming company had recently offered him a trial contract for a 6-part self-defense series. The first promotional shoot was scheduled for that Saturday. The athletic center's management had agreed to let Travis use the main basketball court, provided he followed building policy and did not disrupt the youth volleyball tournament taking place next door. Travis had spent 4 months preparing for it. He had hired a videographer, ordered custom banners, and invited 3 local sponsors. The contract was worth $48,000 if the first episode met its audience target. He could not afford embarrassment. More importantly, he could not tolerate it. At 9:20 that morning, Travis entered the security office carrying a printed access request. Harold had gone home. Daniel was alone, reviewing incident reports. Travis placed the paper on the desk. "I need unrestricted loading access through Saturday." Daniel read the form. The operations manager had approved delivery access from noon until 4 o'clock on Friday and from 6 until 8 o'clock Saturday morning. "This authorizes specific windows," Daniel said. "I know what it says." "Then you're set. I need the door open outside those hours." "You'll need the operations manager to revise it." Travis placed both palms on the desk. "Listen carefully. I am bringing $10,000 in production equipment into this building. I am not carrying it through the lobby because a guard who started 4 hours ago enjoys pretending he has authority." Daniel looked at his hands. The knuckles were smooth. No recent swelling. Fingernails trimmed close. A silver ring on the right middle finger. Daniel looked back at his face. "I don't write the policy, but you choose how aggressively to enforce it. I enforce it the same way for everyone." That answer irritated Travis more than an argument would have. "You know who I am?" "Not yet." Travis gave a short laugh. "Travis Cole. I run Cole Combat Systems." Daniel glanced toward the frosted glass wall separating the office from the corridor. "Good to meet you." Travis waited. Again, Daniel gave him nothing. "You ever train?" Travis asked. "A little." "What style?" "Different things." That usually means no. Daniel returned the form. Have the manager initial any changes. Travis picked up the paper. You should come to one of my beginner classes. First session is free. Might help with the posture. Daniel's posture had not changed. I'll keep it in mind. By lunchtime, 3 employees had heard that the new guard had refused Travis access. By the end of Daniel's shift, the story had grown into a confrontation in which Daniel had threatened to call the police. Daniel corrected no one. The next morning, he found a pair of muddy training shoes sitting on the security desk. A note rested on top. For your posture. Harold read it twice and shook his head. That man has never forgiven a locked door. Daniel moved the shoes to lost property. You going to report it? For leaving shoes? For trying to get under your skin? Daniel opened the morning log. He'll need a longer ladder. Harold laughed so suddenly that coffee spilled across the lid of his thermos. At 6:45, Travis entered through the front doors with 2 students. He glanced at Daniel, then at the empty space where the shoes had been. Did you get my gift? They're in lost property. They were for you. I don't accept gifts from members. One of the students looked down to hide a smile. Travis noticed. His jaw tightened. Come by the studio at noon, he said. I'll show you something useful. I'm working. Your job is standing in a hallway. My job is security. Exactly. You should know how to handle yourself. Daniel checked the visitor log. Enjoy your class. The 2 students followed Travis down the corridor. Daniel heard one of them ask, Do you know that guy? Travis answered loudly enough for the front desk to hear. I know his type. The provocations remained small for the next 2 days. Travis deliberately propped open the loading door with a kettlebell. Daniel removed it. Travis parked his sports car in the emergency lane. Daniel left a written warning beneath the windshield wiper. Travis instructed students to carry equipment through a staff corridor. Daniel redirected them without raising his voice. Each time, Travis waited for anger. Each time Daniel gave him procedure, the lack of reaction became its own insult. On Friday afternoon, the first complication arrived. A delivery truck carrying lighting stands, camera rails, and padded flooring reached the athletic center at 3:42. The loading authorization ended at 4 o'clock. The driver, a nervous 22-year-old named Luis, said unloading would take at least 40 minutes. Daniel checked the paperwork. The delivery company had been told to arrive at 2:30. A collision on Interstate 5 had delayed them. Travis appeared in the loading corridor before Daniel finished reading. Open it, he said. You have 18 minutes. We need an hour. Then I need authorization from operations. The manager left. Daniel called the manager's mobile number. It went to voicemail. Travis looked toward the truck. Every minute that equipment sits outside costs me money. I understand. No, you don't. Daniel checked the emergency plan. The loading area had to be clear by 4:15 because a refrigerated medical shipment was scheduled for the sports therapy clinic upstairs. If Travis's production cases blocked the bay, the clinic could lose temperature-sensitive supplies valued at more than $60,000. Daniel explained this. Travis waved a hand. Put their boxes somewhere else. They're medical supplies. And my equipment is here now. Luis stood near the truck, holding a clipboard against his chest. 2 martial arts students waited behind Travis. A facilities worker named Denise had stopped in the corridor to watch. Daniel made a decision. You can unload the small cases until 4:10. Keep the center lane clear. The truck leaves at 4:12, whether it's empty or not. Travis stared at him. That is not your decision to make. It is while I'm responsible for the bay. You're enjoying this. No. You like having power over people who outrank you. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly, not from anger but attention. Outrank me? In this building. This isn't a military base. I know that. Do you? The question struck closer than Travis understood. Daniel looked at the loading dock clock. 17 minutes. Travis turned toward his students. Unload everything. Daniel stepped into the center of the corridor. Small cases only. Travis came close enough that Daniel could smell peppermint gum beneath his coffee. Move. No. For the first time, Travis's students looked uncertain. Denise reached for her radio. Daniel did not shift his feet. He did not square his shoulders or raise his hands. To anyone unfamiliar with violence, he looked passive. To anyone who understood it, he looked prepared. Travis did not understand it. Not yet. He leaned closer. You think that uniform makes you important? No. Then move. No. A warning buzzer sounded from the truck's liftgate. Luis looked from one man to the other. Travis's right hand tightened around the strap of his duffel bag. Then a woman's voice came from behind Daniel. "Mr. Cole, is there a problem?" Rebecca Mercer stood at the end of the corridor. She had come to bring Daniel the lunch he had forgotten on Emma's kitchen counter that morning. Emma stood beside her wearing a green raincoat and holding a paper bag marked with Daniel's name. For the first time since the argument began, Daniel's expression changed. Not fear, concern. Emma had seen very little of the life Daniel lived before returning home. She knew he had been in the Navy. She knew he disliked fireworks and always sat facing restaurant entrances. She did not know why. Daniel did not want her first lesson about his past to happen in a loading dock beside stacked camera cases. Travis followed his gaze. Something in his face brightened. Not kindness, opportunity. "Family?" he asked. Daniel did not answer. Rebecca approached slowly. "We can wait out front." Travis smiled at Emma. "Your dad and I are discussing workplace responsibility." Emma looked at Daniel. He gave her a small nod. "It's fine." Travis turned back to him. "You see, Mercer, adults solve problems by being flexible." Daniel glanced at the clock. 12 minutes. Travis's smile vanished. He stepped aside, but not because he had accepted the instruction. He stepped aside because he had found another way to make Daniel pay. "Unload the small cases," he told his students. Then he walked past Rebecca and Emma without another word. The medical shipment arrived at 4:13. The center lane was clear. Travis's truck left with 7 large cases still inside. Daniel completed the incident report at 4:38. He recorded the delayed delivery, the compromise he had authorized, and Travis's instruction to disregard it. He included no speculation and no emotional language. Rebecca waited near the lobby. Emma sat beside her, swinging her feet beneath a plastic chair. When Daniel joined them, Emma handed him the paper bag. "You forgot your turkey sandwich." "I heard. Mom said you'd forget your own head if it wasn't attached." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "I said keys." Emma smiled. Daniel sat beside her. The lobby smelled of wet coats and cinnamon from the snack bar. "Was that man mad at you?" Emma asked. "A little. Why?" "He wanted to use a door after his time was finished." Emma considered this. "That's a dumb reason. People get angry about small things when bigger things are bothering them." "What bigger thing?" Daniel looked down the corridor where Travis had disappeared. "I don't know." Rebecca watched him carefully. "You okay?" "I'm fine." She knew him well enough to hear what he had not said. "Saturday is the filming? 6 in the morning. Emma has her swim assessment at 8. Daniel looked at his daughter. "I'll be there." His shift was scheduled to end at 8 o'clock. The assessment began at 8:15. It was the first event Emma had asked him to attend since his return. "I know," she said. "You promised." Daniel folded the top of the lunch bag. "I'll be there." Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. At 5:47, 3 production vans entered the parking lot. Daniel checked each driver's credentials and directed them to the loading area. Travis arrived at 5:58 with his videographer, 2 assistants, 6 students, and a local fitness influencer named Marissa Vale. The basketball court had been transformed by 7 o'clock. Black mats covered the center floor. Tall lights stood behind weighted sandbags. A camera rail ran parallel to the demonstration area. 2 banners displayed Travis's name above the words, "Real World Dominance." Daniel read the phrase once and continued his patrol. The youth volleyball tournament began setting up in the adjacent court. Parents carried folding chairs through the lobby. Children in blue and yellow jerseys chased one another between equipment bags. The center became louder with every passing minute. At 7:12, Daniel found a production cable running across an emergency exit. He told an assistant to move it. The assistant said Travis had approved the layout. Daniel unplugged the cable and placed it against the wall. At 7:18, Travis approached. "Why did you disconnect my light?" "It blocked the exit. We're filming in 15 minutes. You can reroute it overhead or along the west wall." Travis looked at the cable, then at the growing crowd beyond the divider. "This is sabotage. It's a fire code. You have interfered with this production for 3 days." Daniel checked his watch. His replacement, Harold, was due at 7:45. That gave Daniel enough time to change clothes and reach the pool before Emma's assessment. "I've enforced the building rules." Against me. Against everyone. Travis stepped closer. You keep saying that as though repetition makes it true. A camera assistant nearby pretended to adjust a tripod. Marissa looked over from the makeup chair. Two parents paused beside the court entrance. Daniel lowered his voice. Move the cable. Finish your shoot. We don't need another problem. The sentence was meant as an exit. Travis heard a challenge. You think you can give me orders in my own studio? This isn't your studio. The words were quiet. They landed hard. Travis looked around and saw people watching. His students, his sponsors, his videographer, the influencer whose audience he hoped would promote the series. The stakes had changed. This was no longer about a loading door. It was about the version of himself Travis had sold to everyone in the room. He smiled. Maybe we should demonstrate something useful. Daniel's face remained still. No. Travis turned toward the camera crew. Keep rolling. The videographer hesitated. We haven't set audio. Use the room mic. Daniel looked at the clock. 7:21. I'm not part of your shoot. You're security, Travis said loudly. Your job is supposedly handling threats. Let's see whether the taxpayers got their money's worth. I'm privately employed. A few people laughed. It was not a joke, but the laughter made Travis's ears redden. He stepped onto the mat and raised his voice. Come on, Mercer. One simple escape demonstration. I'll put you in a basic hold. You get out. No. Scared? No. Then prove it. I don't need to. That answer shifted the room. The parents watching from the doorway no longer looked amused. Marissa folded her arms. One of Travis's senior students glanced toward the floor. Daniel turned away. Travis followed. You walk around here acting like you're above everyone. Daniel stopped. I do my job. You hide behind rules because you've never tested yourself. Daniel looked at him. The fluorescent lights buzzed above the court. Rubber soles squeaked beyond the divider. Somewhere in the lobby, a child began crying over a lost water bottle. Daniel spoke slowly. You're filming a self-defense program in a room full of children. Move the cable, do your work, and leave this alone. For half a second, Travis seemed to consider it. Then Harold entered the gym carrying a coffee and wearing his security jacket. He took in the cameras, the gathered crowd, and Travis standing inches from Daniel. What did I miss? He asked. Daniel checked the time. Nothing. He removed his radio from his belt and handed it to Harold. Exit cable needs rerouting. Camera 19 is still frozen. Medical clinic opens at 9. Harold accepted the radio. You heading to Emma's swim thing? Yes. Travis heard the name. He stepped between Daniel and the court exit. You don't walk away from me. Daniel's eyes changed. The shift was so small that only Harold noticed it. Move, Daniel said. Travis spread his arms. This is what cowards do. They act calm until someone calls them on it. Daniel glanced at the clock again. 7:26. He had 49 minutes before Emma's assessment. Last time, he said. Move. Travis laughed. Then he slapped him. The sound cracked across the gym. It was not a wild strike. Travis used an open hand, quick and deliberate, intended more to humiliate than injure. Daniel's head turned less than an inch. A red mark appeared along his left cheek. 37 people saw it. For a moment, no one moved. The volleyballs stopped bouncing behind the divider. The videographer lowered his hands from the camera controls. Harold's coffee cup tilted, spilling a dark line across the lid. Travis stood with his right hand still raised. He expected Daniel to swing. He expected rage, embarrassment, or fear. Instead, Daniel looked at him with something almost like disappointment. You shouldn't have done that, he said. Travis reached for Daniel's collar. The confrontation ended in one move. Daniel caught the wrist, turned beneath it, and guided Travis face down onto the mat, with his arm secured behind him. There was no punch, no kick, and no visible effort. 1 second Travis was standing. The next, his cheek pressed against black rubber, while Daniel controlled his wrist with one hand. The undefeated black belt did not understand how he had fallen. That was the part that frightened him. He tried to rise. Daniel adjusted his grip by less than an inch. Travis stopped. Don't, Daniel said. The word was quiet. Travis's students remained frozen. One of them, a former Coast Guard rescue swimmer named Aaron Pike, stared at Daniel's hand position. Aaron had attended joint maritime training years earlier. He recognized the economy of movement, the balance, and the complete absence of anger. He looked at Harold. Who is he? Harold kept his eyes on Daniel. Retired Navy. Aaron swallowed. What kind of Navy? Daniel released Travis and stepped back. Travis rolled onto one knee. His face had gone pale. He looked at his own hand as though it belonged to someone else. Daniel straightened his jacket. Aaron answered his own question. SEAL. The word moved through the room in fragments. Daniel looked at Aaron. I was. 14 years compressed into 2 syllables. Travis stood slowly. The left side of his tracksuit was dusted with gray lint from the mat. His hair had fallen across his forehead. He looked toward the camera. The red recording light was still on. Turn that off, he said. No one moved. I said turn it off. The videographer reached for the controls. Marissa stepped between him and the camera. No, she said. Travis stared at her. What? You hit an employee on camera. He provoked me. 37 witnesses had seen otherwise. Daniel walked to the emergency exit, lifted the loose cable, and placed it against the west wall. Secure it with tape, he told the nearest assistant. The assistant nodded immediately. Travis's breathing became louder. You think this proves something? Daniel turned. No. You ambushed me. You grabbed me. You knew what you were doing. Yes. The simplicity of the answer left Travis nowhere to go. Harold approached with the radio. Police? Daniel looked at Travis. The instructor's hands trembled now, not from injury, but from the collapse of certainty. His students would replay the moment. His sponsors would ask questions. The footage would exist, even if the episode never did. Daniel could have made it worse. He could have described the deployments, the training, the years in which men far more dangerous than Travis had tried to hurt him. He did not. Call management, Daniel said. Let them handle it. Travis looked almost offended. You're not pressing charges? That depends on whether you create another problem. For the first time all week, Travis had nothing to say. Daniel entered the locker room, changed into jeans and a gray sweatshirt, and washed his face with cold water. The mark on his cheek remained visible. He studied it in the mirror, then checked the time. 7:38. He still had 37 minutes. When he returned to the gym, the production had stopped. The sponsors were speaking quietly near the bleachers. Travis sat alone on a folding chair, while the operations manager, summoned from home, reviewed the camera footage on a laptop. Daniel walked past them. Harold followed him into the corridor. You sure you're okay? Yes. That was the cleanest thing I've ever seen. Daniel zipped his jacket. It was avoidable. Not by you. Daniel looked through the lobby windows. Morning sunlight reflected from rainwater in the parking lot. Everything is avoidable earlier. Harold studied him. You going to tell Emma? She'll see my face. What will you say? The truth. All of it? Daniel considered that. No. Enough. He reached the pool at 8:09. Emma stood beside lane 4 wearing a blue swim cap and adjusting her goggles. Rebecca saw the mark on his cheek immediately, but she did not ask in front of their daughter. You made it, Emma said. I promised. Her assessment involved 4 lengths of freestyle, 2 lengths of backstroke, and 30 seconds of treading water. Daniel watched from the bleachers with his hands folded between his knees. Emma was not the fastest swimmer. Halfway through the final length, she swallowed water and grabbed the lane rope. The instructor asked whether she wanted to stop. Emma looked toward the bleachers. Daniel did not gesture. He did not tell her to continue. He simply stayed where she could see him. She released the rope and finished. Afterward, wrapped in a towel, she sat beside him. What happened to your face? A man at work made a bad decision. Did you hit him? No. Did he hit you? Daniel paused. He slapped me. Emma's eyes widened. What did you do? I stopped him from doing it again. How? Carefully. She thought about this while twisting the edge of the towel between her fingers. Was he the angry man from yesterday? Yes. Did he get fired? I don't know. Do you want him to? Daniel looked through the glass wall toward the pool. Sunlight moved across the water in broken white lines. I want him to understand why it happened. Emma frowned. Because he was mean? Because he thought being strong meant nobody could tell him no. She leaned against his shoulder. That's not strong. No, Daniel said. It isn't. On Monday, Harbor Point Athletic Center terminated Travis Cole's lease for assaulting an employee and violating safety requirements. The streaming company canceled the self-defense contract after reviewing the footage. The video itself was never released publicly. Marissa handed the original file to management, then deleted her copy. Travis's students received refunds from the athletic center. Several transferred to a smaller school 6 miles away. Aaron Pike offered to help the younger students finish their current training cycle without charge. Daniel declined to press criminal charges after Travis signed a formal no trespass agreement and completed an anger management program required by the city prosecutor. Some employees thought Daniel had been too forgiving. Daniel did not see it as forgiveness. He saw it as containment. 3 weeks later, a plain envelope arrived at the security desk. There was no return address. Inside was a handwritten note from Travis. It contained 11 words. "I mistook your restraint for weakness. I understand the difference now." Daniel read it once. He folded the note and placed it in the bottom drawer beneath the incident logs. Harold watched him. "That all he wrote?" "That's all." "You believe him?" Daniel closed the drawer. "I believe he wrote it." Harold smiled. "That is the most Navy answer I've ever heard." Daniel returned to the camera monitors. Cameras 7 and 19 had finally been repaired. All 32 feeds showed live images. Outside, rain began tapping against the entrance doors. At 5:56, the first swimmers arrived. At 6:10, the retired teachers entered for water aerobics. At 6:23, a delivery driver brought protein drinks and tried to leave them beside the fire exit. Daniel redirected him to the storage office. He spoke politely. He did not hurry. He did not lean against the desk. Pride often mistakes quiet for surrender, because it cannot imagine strength without an audience. Travis Cole had spent years proving he could defeat men who agreed to fight him. Daniel Mercer needed 1 second to show him the danger of forcing a fight on a man who had spent years learning how not to have one. If Daniel's restraint meant more to you than the takedown, subscribe and leave a like for more stories about quiet people who are dangerously easy to underestimate. Share this with someone who believes real strength is measured by control, not noise. And tell us in the comments, should Daniel have pressed charges after the slap, or was making Travis face the consequences without destroying his life the stronger choice?